Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Cocked, locked, here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. Jason's engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. We're not going to be taking calls today. Rich Scheben's with us. Welcome, Rich.
Well, thank you, Vince. How is everything going with you today? And believe it or not, I did not mention cars.
Well, I was going to say, I was listening so carefully, and I almost didn't hear it. Almost.
Actually, what you heard me say is we've been battling with a little anxiety here, a sow grizzly with two cubs that have been trying to break into the garden and the fruit trees and the goats and the chickens. But the guard dogs have done a good job keeping them at bay.
Well, we've had the same kind of problem, well, similar problems, not grizzlies, but deer and small animals like skunks and wild four-legged critters. In the middle of the night, they pick out the best tomatoes, the ones that are going to be perfect tomorrow, and they take a bite out of the ones that they can reach, and just wipe them out. And so the chickens get, these partially eaten tomatoes. And then the deer girdle the fruit trees. The bark is the best part. And without the bark, you don't have any fruit trees. And it just kills them.
So you don't have fencing around your garden?
No. Well, around the garden, yes. The garden has, it's a raised bed. It's 2 concrete blocks high, 12-inch concrete blocks, filled with dirt. And so they kind of stay in place. And then it's filled from the ground up with topsoil that's been amended with compost and peat moss and lime, etc. And then there's a cattle panel fence around that. And then in between the cattle panel holes is high tensile fence wire that we pull tight to make the holes half the size that they would be. So, a cat could climb up a couple rungs, if you will, and then climb in. Other than that, it keeps the chickens out. But
we have here in Montana, you cannot have a viable garden unless you have a minimum, and I say minimum, of an 8-foot fence. Now, even a black bear, never mind a grizzly, could fart and blow the fence down. But the guard dogs, if it wasn't for the guard dogs, you've heard me say on the show many times, we wouldn't have a carrot, a tomato, a plum, a chicken, a goat, or anything on this property because they're worth their weight in gold. You almost need guard dogs when you live rural like this to keep your food supply safe.
Yeah. Well, our shepherds are almost old enough now where we let them out at night if they hear something. They tell us, hey, we need to go out and check this out. And they race around and they look for whatever it is and they scare off whatever it is. And 2 of them is a great way to go. 2 is, I think, 5 times better than just 1. But they're not quite old enough to completely defend themselves against larger animals like coyotes. And they're getting there, and they will be there soon. And once that happens, they'll be out, all the time on guard. But not quite. It'll probably take a month or so before that happens. But Rich Scheben, since you mentioned cars, why don't we talk about a little bit about our lifestyle? You mentioned the gardening, and you have to have a fence to protect what's inside your garden from wild predators outside. I mean, they like what you've grown just as much as you do, maybe even more. And our lifestyle is dependent upon us being healthy and having the energy and the drive and the determination and the strength to get it done. And when a young person doesn't really have much of an opportunity to do what we're doing right now, meaning a young person can't start out and say, yeah, I'll collect those tractors and I need them right now, and I need the land right now, and I need the home right now, and I need the implements right now, etc. And so it's really difficult to start doing what you're doing. It's difficult to start doing what we're doing. It's taken 4 generations, for us to get to this point. But what do you think? Do you have a solution for what a young person can do?
I absolutely do. And we talked about this privately, as you know. And before I start on that, I want to say real quick to President Donald Trump from USA Prepares, our condolences to you and your family for Robert Trump on the loss of your beloved brother. I also have a young brother whose name is Robert, and I can imagine what you're going through. And keep up the good fight, sir. We appreciate what you do. Now, to answer your question, Vincent, one of the things that we talk about is combining resources, ideas, and solutions, and buying land, being self-sufficient. We talk about this on a very regular basis. And we have to look at the old generation who has the skill sets, may be receding in capital resources, but still have some energy to live on their land. What we're talking about is possibly creating a liaison company for people who want to live on acreage. Now, I realize you can do some bad ideas, which is a last resort, and people do it all the time, called a reverse mortgage, where if you're an old person, you want cash flow, you want a lump sum, you got to give up a lot of rights, and there's a lot of loopholes, and there's a lot of checks and balances, and you could get paid for living on your land till you die. However, this idea is a little better. For young people who don't have the down payment, the capital resources, the skill sets, because they haven't been taught these skill sets in school, we need to bring back a mentor-protege environment and combine the resources of young and old. So let's say a young person wants to live on 20 acres. Now, I'm going to be shooting from the hip with a lot of these examples. So let's say me and Vince had a company that we had already approached enough older people who wanted to live on their land. They were losing labor skills because of their age, but they wanted to live on their land. Young people wanted land. They're sick of renting an apartment because they're literally throwing money out the window. They're not getting ahead. They're not getting the lifestyle of nature, and they're not building skill sets. So we combine those two people, get them together, and they share property and nature. They cross-train. These cross-train skill sets. And every contract is different. They negotiate the down payment, which could be, 1,000 different contracts, interest rates, labor, cash flow. The old create what's called a living will, so there'll be lawyers involved. So the old people get to live on their property, and as the people get older, whatever was pre-negotiated at the table regarding the labor gets done by the young people. And the old people take a X amount of down payment. This is especially going to work fabulously well for young people who don't have the credit, because credit is collapsing all over America. And there's so many factors and variables in this. But the old people would hold the paper and the deed. And when I say old, it could be anybody from 45 till 100. When I say young, it could be anybody who is out of their parents' home and hasn't established skill sets, capital resources, et cetera, et cetera. Now, again, there's so many different variables, but I believe we, on this show, folks, we've given hours of companies who are not deserving of government grants. This is one of the few businesses worthy of government grants. I mean, some of the things I remember mentioning in the book. Why are American lesbians overweight? Millions of dollars went to this government grant. I'm not kidding. Look it up. How come Big Pharma is getting government grants for would-be vaccines? I mean, we can talk. Everything is government. Big government corporations are so corrupt to the core. The only way the little guy can survive is through self-sufficiency, necessary means. I mean, look what just happened the other day. The appeals court blocked Hillary Clinton testimony. I mean, if you or I destroyed our emails with BleachBit, with hammers, if it was proven that you and the Democrat National Committee literally made up the fabricated steel dossier, the P dossier, if it was all proven, we would be in jail for the rest of our lives. And these people don't even have to give testimony? Folks, I don't see any other alternative in a corrupt system that we have for the little people. So what I think we should do is, this could be dovetailed, this idea, with the self-sufficiency preparedness school that Vince and I have talked about. That's in my book, I think chapter 17 or 15, I can't remember. But we talk about off-grid living, alternative energy, buying land, raising animals, hunting and fishing, teaching how to butcher, can your meat, can your vegetables, handgun defense, the Constitution, financial counseling, and teaching people about our economy and interest rates and principal and amortization schedules, wild and edible plants, botany in general, nutrition, which most Americans have no idea because they don't even have access to good nutrition, homeschooling ideas, gardening and farming. I mean, this could be such a beneficial business and opportunity for probably 90% of Americans. And that's why I use the term the bottom 93% of income earners, because we are losing ground. So if there's anybody in the White House listening, we would love to have an opportunity of a government grant that would actually be beneficial to the people instead of spending millions of dollars on why lesbians are overweight. And I know it sounds tongue-in-cheek, like I'm making a joke, but no, this was a grant. We've mentioned hundreds of grants like this, which only benefits certain people because they just have to. And in government, if they don't use the money, they don't and spend it, they don't get that income opportunity back the following year. So we've wasted so much money. So if we had a liaison company where the old and young can combine resources and went back to the mentor-protege relationship, I think this would benefit so many people. Vince, what do you think?
I am absolutely on board with this, Rich Scheben. And one of the things that we could do, you and I could do, is we could put people on the farm. Young people with older people, exactly what you said. Mentor-protege relationship. And we could help ensure national security, national stability by farming. No kidding. We'll be right back. Rich, I'd like to thank you for expressing our condolences to President Donald Trump on the loss of his brother, Robert Trump. Very, very sad. And I appreciate you expressing our thoughts here at USA Prepares to the president and his family and his wife. You mentioned the mentor-protege relationship, and since you mentioned cars, I do have an example, and it's a very simple example about what Rich Scheben is talking about. So over the years, I've been teaching our boys, about automotive mechanics. And this is an example of mentor-protege relationship that maybe it might have been missed by many people. So our son was working on an air conditioning system for a customer. and it wasn't cooling off. He replaced parts, replaced a compressor, replaced the expansion valve, replaced the receiver dryer. There's not much left to replace. There's only a few other components. And it wasn't getting quite as cold inside the car as it should. And what you do is you look at the delta, the difference between the outside temperature and the temperature of the cool air inside the car. You put a thermometer inside the vent, and with a 4-inch reach or so, and you can measure the temperature with a dial, like a thermometer. And it wasn't getting as cold as he wanted it to be. And I said, "You're right. Now, why is that?" So he had the question, "Look, Dad, it's not, everything is right, but it's not getting as cold as it should." And I explained to him, "Well, here's how it works. An air conditioning system takes the heat out of the inside of the car and dumps it outside in front of the car's radiator. So the heat that was in the car is now being pushed under the hood. It's being pulled through it's called a condenser, which is in front of the radiator. It's like a radiator in front of the radiator, but this radiator is for the air conditioning system. It's called a condenser. And it had 150, 200,000 miles of road dirt in the radiator and the condenser. I said, so get some degreaser, spray it on the condenser and the radiator, and when the car's cool, hose it down and degrease the radiator. And that way you'll have more efficiency, and you'll pick up several degrees in terms of cooling inside the car. Now, why am I relating this automotive example? Because this is the mentor-protege relationship, okay? So now it's a no-brainer. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I got it. I understand now why this has to be done. So that's the kind of thing that some of the older guys like me and Mrs. Finelli can do to help the younger people understand some of the things about this complex operation called farming. It ain't that easy. There's a lot to it. You have to be a welder. You have to be a mechanic. You have to be an accountant. You have to be a meteorologist. You have to be a biologist. You have to be a chemist. You have to have a strong back. You have to have work ethic. You have to understand contracts, sociological relationships, market forces. There's a lot to it. I mean, and all kinds of there are all kinds of facets to farming that are way beyond what most people might initially think. So I don't see how it is absolutely possible at all for a young person to become a farmer, to actually produce something, whether it be crops or raise animals or both, without having someone to help guide and answer those questions. Like, hey, Dad, this air conditioning, everything's right, except it's just not getting as cold as it should. And it was a real simple fix, but it wasn't obvious initially. Okay? Let me say it a different way. Who degreases the radiator? Who does that? Nobody. Why? Because we just take it for granted that it works. So that's just one example of what Rich Scheben is talking about. And I absolutely love this plan, which will merge people who want to live on a farm, get out of the city, exhibit some stick-to-itiveness, are willing to work hard, put their back into it, exhibit honesty and integrity. And if they're willing to do those things and they're willing to learn and they're willing to work way harder, longer, and smarter than somebody who might be sitting behind a keyboard, they can actually become a farmer and build equity and still have a mentor and get it done. I'm impressed with this plan, Rich Scheben. We'll be right back. Rich Scheben's with us, and we're talking about our way of life on the farm, his, ours. And, class, you just heard the top of the hour news, the bottom of the hour news about the rolling blackouts in California. Hundreds of thousands of people without electricity on purpose. They literally said, okay, these guys over here, we're going to shut them off. And they took the electricity away. And so they determined who was not going to get electricity, who was going to get electricity, and they made those decisions in a vacuum, and you had no input as to, wait, what about me? Okay? So if you want to insulate yourself from some of that, You can. And you need a little bit of land. You need to get away from the city. By the way, cities are hotter. If you take the temperature of a city versus the countryside on the same day with the same amount of sunshine, you'll find the cities are hotter in the winter and in the summer. Doesn't matter, because in the winter, all those furnaces are dumping heat into the air. And in the summer, same thing. All those homes and businesses are dumping heat into the air. So cities are hotter in the winter and in the summer, all the time. So if you're interested in being a farmer, you're going to have to be an electrician. You're going to have to be a plumber. You're going to have to be a woodsman. You're going to have to be a general laborer. Yesterday, the family went out and we loaded wood. One of the hottest days of the year, we're loading wood. Now, who is thinking about heating the house when it's over 90 degrees out? Who's thinking about that? We are.
The grasshoppers.
Yeah. So we're out there in this blazing heat because we could get the wood, we could get it efficiently loaded, and we're all there, and our schedule is lined up, and we're thinking, I said to the family a few days ago, winter's coming. I mean, nobody's thinking about winter right now, right? It's like record hot in the United States, and I'm thinking about the winter because I know it's going to be cold, and we'll freeze to death if we don't have heat, and we heat our house with wood. So what did we get yesterday? 9 tons of wood. Now, let me give you an example. We have a trailer that's 26 feet long. It's a gooseneck trailer. And two heaping loads, as much as you could put on that trailer, twice. And then I had my little Chevy pickup truck, half-ton, standard size, not a baby pickup truck, but, a full-size pickup truck. The bed was filled to capacity, and I had a 10-foot long by 6.5-foot wide trailer attached to that, filled as much as it could hold. That's what we did yesterday afternoon. That's what farming is like. That's what the protege mentor life is like. And why did that happen? Because the mentor said, it's going to be cold in the winter. We need to get wood today or tomorrow or the following day. That's what we need to do. So somebody has to say something to get the ball rolling. Now, I'm not saying I'm always that guy. I'm not saying Rich is always that guy. But somebody has to do it. And that's what our lives are like on the farm. Rich, can you comment on that?
Well, first of all, yeah. The grasshoppers always think about it. But the ants are the ones who are always doing it and preparing with foresight. There's so many things that we have lack of control in. And we talk about this on this show a lot. You heard me talk about what I call economic 101 updates. We have a lot of math red flags that are coming our way. We have a transition of possible deflation to inflation. Now, there's certain products and services that are going to be deflationary, stagflationary, and inflationary. And the inflation that's occurring is not going to benefit the bottom 93% of income earners. It's a destroyer. If we go from deflation to inflation, it's going to destroy, because a little deflation is always good for the little guy. Now, we are in a situation where we don't have free markets, very little supply and demand. We have government markets, and I've talked about that till I'm blue in the face. Why do you think the CPI doesn't include food and energy inflation? Because it's too volatile. I mean, a lot of the information we get is not accurate. The government owns 80% of the ETFs in the bond market. And how many bailouts have they done to the too big to fail and too big to jail and the zombie companies? How many unlimited student loans to colleges have gone to certain people who's not going to pay it back, but it's responsible for us, the taxpayers, to pay it back somehow. So all these interventions are by the governments and big corporations are for the well-connected and the corrupt. When you eliminate supply and demand in free markets, the little guy doesn't stand a chance. So the government keeps printing money, Now think about this, folks, regarding technology. Why are big tech stocks always leading the way? How come there's only like 4, 5, 6 companies who are holding up the stock market? It's because it leads to the removal of labor. You've heard us talk about this many times. Robotics, automation, and artificial intelligence. This is a form of work delegitimization, which we've talked about many, many times. Now, there's so many questions, there's so many variables, like credit, what's got a value, what's the collateral, is it any good, the demographic situation we're heading into, what's going to be deflation, what's going to be inflation, labor and material. Vince, you sent me an article the other day about how wood for building homes has doubled in price. You got to include the corruption, the fake fundamentals, which mean nothing. How much more forbearance on loans are we going to have, on debt? Inflation. People say, "Oh, well, my house price is going to be higher," like the 70s. Well, the 70s was different. We were in the beginning of that central bank fiat system when they basically eliminated gold from the picture. So 70s had all this money printing, and granted, if you owned a home, you did very well, but there was certain things like work ethic, basically coming out of the Industrial Revolution, certain wars, a lot of corrupt things that made some people some money. But yes, you can pay off your debt with cheaper money if we have inflation. But we're also obtaining lower yields for people who are savers in retirement and things like that, because we're going to have basically the mean negative real rate will be losing money over time. So, then you say, we have silver and gold. Okay, if the Fed keeps printing and monetizing more debt, what's going to happen with silver and gold? Of course, on paper, it looks, when you use common sense and logic, it's going to go up. But when you incorporate the manipulation and the corruption in the formula, it depends on paper contracts and naked shorts. See, it all depends. Now, if they got rid of the COMEX, if they got rid of paper contracts and naked shorts, and there was only a physical price of silver and metal, I would be paying attention. If it wasn't so corrupt, because silver's supposed to be a 16-to-1 ratio, minimum. It comes out of the ground at 8-to-1. Why is it 70-to-1 with gold? You see, there's so much corruption, there's so many variables that you can't even use common sense and logic in a lot of cases, and that's why moving out of urban, suburban America, getting a little acreage, and working, living, and thinking outside the box is going to give you a better chance of controlling your own destiny. Vince?
I was looking at the price of lumber. You mentioned how it's doubled. Well, it has. Now, the average, let's say, 2,400 square foot house, I just picked that, has about 400 2x4s that are 8 feet long. Now, a 2x4 used to cost about $2, and in the good old days, like 8 months ago. Now, right now, at the moment, Home Depot, $4.78. So it's more than doubled. The price of a 4x4, I was looking that up just a second ago, has increased as well. So by double. Roughly they were about $7 a 4x4 by 8. That means 4 feet on each dimension on the sides and 8 feet long. $7, and now they're double, $14 roughly, or more. So the price of the wood, the sheathing, the OSB, oriented strand board, plywood, 2x4s, 2x6s, 2x8s, 2x10s, 2x12s, doubled. So the price of the materials has doubled. Now, why is that? Is it because we're all putting decks on the back of our houses? I don't think so. Is it because we're all doing home improvement projects? I don't think so. Some people are doing that, but not everybody. Not enough to cause the lumber price to double. So it's a combination of supply, people not going to the lumber yards, the trucks not hauling the lumber. The whole supply chain, plus the production, has, I believe, caused this. So that means that for that young guy, gal, get married, they want to buy a house, and boy, wouldn't it be nice to build a new house? Well, the materials are going to cost twice as much. So that's another thing that if you're a farmer, you look at. You look at what is the cost of materials. You look at when do you buy it. You have to be a little bit internet savvy. Whether if you're going to be a successful farmer, you have to understand the markets. Let me give you an example. Another example. I'll connect some of these dots. When do we buy propane? We use propane for cooking, predominantly. And we buy propane in the heat of the summer. Now, why is that? Because no one's thinking about heating in the summer. Now, people may buy, a refill on a propane cylinder for the gas grill, but that's nothing. I mean, that doesn't even, that's not even on the radar of propane use. Heating is the big one for propane. So people are buying propane when they think about it. They think about it when they're starting to get cold or when they're freezing. We think about it way before that, in the summer. And in the summer, propane is like half the price, roughly half the price. So you'd have to be an idiot not to buy propane in the summer. I mean, most people, what they do is they call a propane company or they call their oil company, the fuel delivery company. They say, yeah, just put us on that automatic delivery. Well, when do you think they fill you up? In the wintertime or just before the winter when the price has already climbed to its almost maximum. That's when they sell it to you. Now, when do the oil companies buy the fuel for delivery? They buy it in the summertime when it's at the lowest price. So they buy it at the bottom and they sell it at the top. Same with propane. So what Rich and I are talking about doing is having the seniors, the ones who have already figured this out, the stuff that they don't teach you in school, we will teach the young people. And that's what we've been doing on the radio for 10 years, teaching exactly this. Well, we could get some help. We could get some help from the farmers who love living on their farm and don't want to be put in a assisted living home. They could have some young people join them, almost like being adopted, almost. They can work together and everybody can stay on the farm with a purpose and equity. That's what we're talking about. We'll be right back. Rich Scheben's with us. Rich, I am absolutely stunned, and I'll tell you why. So, during the break, I went out in the kitchen and got a little more coffee. And I was looking at some of the beams in our house, and we have a lot of beams, class. In the living room, one of the beams is 28 feet long, and it's 12 inches by 10 inches, 28 feet long, one piece, which means that, and it's oak. So somebody had to find a tree that at the top was greater than 12 inches by 10 inches, so they could saw this into a one single piece of beam. And there are beams all over the house. I mean, lots of them. And I remember hauling a really heavy load of beams to build this house. And I'm thinking there may be 100. If you consider the outside trim and the porches and all that, maybe 100 pieces of wood that are beams. And the price was $1,100 for the whole load, $1,100. I just looked, and some of it's cedar and some of it's oak. I just looked up the price of a 4x4, 8 feet long. So 4 inches by 4 inches, 8 feet long. Number two, Douglas fir, $14.38 at Home Depot. That's twice. It's over twice what it was. Then I looked up a 4x4 by 8 feet long, same thing in terms of dimensions, but cedar, $32. Actually, $31.77. I'm telling you, it's not affordable to build a house today if you had to work for a living. Now, if you could, just be born in a bed and end up a prince, that's a different story. But if you actually had to work for a living, it would be really tough, which makes this proposition that Rich Scheben and I are talking about even more viable. Okay, the protege-mentor relationship. Because how many young people are actually thinking about what the cost of a 4x4, 8 feet long, or a 2x4, 8 feet long, or the price of roofing tin or roofing shingles, etc., or the price of fuel, diesel, propane? How many young people are actually thinking about that? Somebody has to teach them because the school system has not done it.
Well, Vince, this goes back to some of the ideas and solutions that we've talked about regarding, like, I had this garage built for me by people now who are building in barns, and they have a certain hydraulic truck. They can deliver anything. My garage is either 20 or 24 foot long, perfect guest cabin, perfect starter cabin, $6,700. $6,700. So you insulate it yourself. You put in a stove. You put in a water tank. Up. You make a little vaulted ceiling, and you put in a water tank. You do gravity feed, and you're living for pennies. Versus buying a $300,000 home on a cookie-cutter subdivision where you have the house is 50, 60 years old, and you have 50, 60-year-old problems, and you're paying for hot water heaters and pressure tanks and plumbing and electricity going bad. You're inheriting all these issues. We have to start thinking outside the box and start living outside the box. There are different ways to do it. And if you can't afford, if you want to build your own house, you can't afford a solid beam, there's something called glue lamps that are extremely inexpensive and quite functional. So there's different ways to do different things. And Vince, I know we're getting close to the top of the hour break here, and on the second hour, I'd love to go through some news in a flash, as you call it, if I may, please.
Sure. I'll tell you what, though. Let's just tell the class, if we have struck a note with you, if you're a farmer and you would like some help, and you think, wouldn't it be nice to have some young people, because maybe you don't have family who's interested in being a farmer, and yet you'd like to live on your farm and get some help, and in trade, by agreement, by contract, some young people, maybe a young couple moves in, you work with them, they work with you, they kind of take care of you, you kind of teach them, and they end up with something. And you end up with, help, live-in help. If you're interested in that, you can send me an email at usaprepares.com. So that would be instructor, INSTRUCTOR, at usaprepares.com, usaprepares.com, instructor at usaprepares.com. And let me know if you're interested. And if we find that there's some interest, we'll flesh this out some more. But I think it's doable. Any quick comments, Rich?
Well, I think there aren't many alternatives out there. It's almost like we're in Teenaville for commerce, Teenaville for money and currency, Teenaville for leaving. And, of course, Tina, folks, is an acronym for there is no other alternative. And I think that's what we do on this show more than anybody, is not only do we give ideas and solutions out of the box, 90% of what we discuss, we do. So we've been there, we've done that. I'm from the big city. I'm from New York City. I came to Montana. I've always wanted to live like this. It's very doable. I mean, we're living in a situation. I mean, here in New York City, has lost population gains for the last 70 years. People are finally waking up. There's a Democrat politician, John Thompson, who's encouraging the crowd to burn down Minneapolis subdivisions. A Democrat politician. Do you really, really want to live in urban, suburban America, folks?
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Living in a subdivision, and you don't know from one second to the next whether there's going to be a parade down your street or not. We'll be right back with Rich Scheben. He's live in Montana. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, hour number 2 with Rich Scheben. Rich, I just want to tell you that I get telephone calls and I get emails, and a lot of people like hearing you on the radio. They just love hearing you. I'm not saying it for any other reason than it's absolutely true. So they are thanking you. I just want to convey that message, and I'm thanking you because
I appreciate
it. Actually,
kind words.
Well,
I appreciate the kind words, but my whole objective in my life at this time, after being on the air for 9 years, is to try to give some type of representation to the people, to we the people. And I realize I have to be hated for saying a lot of things I do, even though a lot of the articles I mentioned seem surreal, but they're all published in the public domain. We have to realize that we're being distracted, dumbed down, and divided by groups. So it's my job to wake people up and explain to them how we're being used, conned, played, taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And that's why I use financial, economic, social, and political rationale. And, I don't do it for praise. I don't do it to be famous or infamous. I don't do it for the money. Everything I do is for my country. And it seems that's what Donald Trump is doing also. Now, I realize he's in mourning right now, but I'd like to mention a few articles. Here we go. President Trump talked about the Mueller witch hunt. They spent $50 million and found no collusion. And we all knew this was all a hoax, propaganda, false flags, lies, gaslighting. Same thing with Stormy Daniels, same thing with Ukraine. This man has gone through and is still going through multiple coup attempts, and yet the powers that be at the top, like the DOJ and the CIA and the FBI and all of the intelligence agencies, are not. Where are the convictions? Where are the arrests? There's a little declassifications coming. I think there's been one major arrest at a mid-level person. We're getting to the point where we can't compete as a country regarding commerce, regarding legitimacy, regarding the rule of law. It's like, Trump's not important because he's not the UN. Well, you know what? The UN doesn't take an oath to protect and preserve the Constitution and the people. We're living in a fork of the road where there's four forks. One road says the Twilight Zone. The other one says La La Land. The other one says 1984 Orwellian Nightmare. And the other one says Stupidville. You know what President Trump, I hear him ask for? Patriots and guts. And it's our duty not to be the silent majority anymore because history is about to be changed. And all those millions of combat soldiers who died for our freedoms and liberties. Do you want to basically turn your back on these people? I don't. I'm not going to. Here's an article right here. Donald Trump donates his quarterly salary to repair national monuments that was busted up by the Democrat cities. I want you to think about that. Here we have a man, granted he's a billionaire, granted he had a help, he was on third base. I don't think he will admit that when he was born. However, he does not have to do anything that he's doing. He could be going fishing and hunting trips every day, traveling around the world in his jets and his hotels, and he could be having a ball. But no, he's putting his life, his safety of himself and his family on the line. And he's not even taking a salary. I think his salary is $1 per year. And then you have the Democrat Party and senators like this Hirono is calling, these are all articles in the public domain since last time been on the air. This Hirono from Hawaii is calling Trump a misogynist who can't handle strong women. This is the biggest bunch of BS I've ever heard in my life. He has more women in the White House staff in the history of America. About half of the women of the staff are women. Everything they do is a lie. Hirono, you wouldn't know a strong woman if you were locked in a room with her. Look at what Millie Weaver just went through. Millie Weaver, let's talk about strong women. She just created a documentary, and I recommend everybody in America and the world see this. It's called Shadowgate. I'm just going to give some, some talking points. It's basically an investigative report done by Millie Weaver. She talks about the military-industrial complex, collusion, the private contractors, psychological warfare. And, people are probably saying, my mind can't be, bought out or anything. Well, what about the pandemic? Okay, geoengineering virus to remove your legitimate vote. What about mass shootings? So certain idiots could vote and take away your Second Amendment right. Psychological warfare is alive and well, folks. She talks about blackmail by Brennan, who should be in jail. Artificial intelligence, putting behavioral profiles on every one of us. Unauthorized data collection from Americans to foreigners. Information information hidden in Germany, surveillance, hacking, so much more. This is what you call a strong woman. Laura Loomer, running for Congress. Savannah Hernandez. How about Laura Logan, who was almost raped to death? How about Judge Jeanine Pirro? How about Anna Marie Reitzinger? How about Faith Goldie, who ran for Toronto mayor, and they blocked her every which way you could think of? How about Deborah Tavares? How about Katie Hopkins? How about Candace Owens, who spoke in Congress a couple times, ate their lunch, stayed over a few hours, was the guest chef to serve Congress crow? Hirona, how about all these combat deaths, which 99% are men? How come you as a strong woman don't talk about that? How about work mortality? 94% male. Homicide, 76% male. Suicide, 75% male. How about the Kavanaugh report? Kavanaugh is now a gang rapist for the rest of his life when every woman but one admitted they were lying. Where was your big mouth there? New York Times on record saying that pedophilia is not a crime. Where's your big mouth there? The average rapist spends less than 4 years in prison. Where is your big mouth there? President Trump is not a sexist misogynist. He's probably the best and last hope Americans have for freedom, liberty, and the Constitution. All right, Vince, may I catch my breath and start news in a flash, please?
Yeah, and while you do, I just have a quick comment.
Please.
It's tangential, but I do have a comment. You know, we've been talking about the rolling power outage, and you know, it could be really damaging. It could be dangerous to health and so forth. Well, here's something that very few people know. So they've had a rolling blackout, rolling brownout in California, as you know. But here's what it did. As a result, the sewage treatment plant, and we said this was going to happen months ago. We said there's going to be heat, there's going to be power outages, there's going to be intentional shutoffs, blackouts, brownouts, etc., and it's going to affect the sewage treatment plants. Well, it did in California. So what happened on August 15th, because the electricity went down, the pumps that pumped the sewage to a treatment plant stopped working, and then there was an overflow. 50,000 gallons of sewage was discharged accidentally. Well, actually, it was by design. It was discharged because of poor design. 50,000 gallons of toxic sewage was discharged into a waterway. So there you have it. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you don't want to be part of this, if you don't want this to happen to your village, where the freshwater supply cross-connects to the sewage treatment effluent, you need to get out of there. It's as simple as that. And that's what Rich and I have been talking about. So if you're interested, instructor@usaprepares.com. Back to you, Rich.
Well, thank you, Vince. And again, as always, I always appreciate you allowing me to exercise my First Amendment right. And as articles I've mentioned in the past, folks, you know, Democrat governors and mayors, especially in California, are basically saying, if you don't do what I say, I'm going to shut off your power and water. Do you want to live under that kind of tyranny? That's a yoke I don't want to live under. Okay, article. Comcast just banned Laura Loomer from sending texts and emails to voters. Well, Hirono from Hawaii, this strong woman, Laura Loomer, she can't get her word out because you're blocking her. The social media, the mainstream media, Hollywood, big tech, all the people who you support. Why is Laura Loomer, a strong woman, being blocked? Because she's not selling your narrative. That's why. How come you don't say anything, Hirono, when all these certain women are basically feeling entitled to play the victim group status card and demand to lower the bars of standards and expectations for a job, which eliminates hard work for results and qualification? Hirono, where is your strong woman narrative? How about when they demand that the people who are targeted and affected get no protection, rights, or restitution under the rule of law? And you want to change the rule of law with precedents. Where's your big mouth, Rono? When the strong women speak up and they say, why are we enabling and protecting the most corrupt companies in the country with liability immunity, destroying capitalism, enforcing fraud, illegitimacy, and fascism, creating more wealth inequality where the money goes from the bottom 93% to the top 1%. And you're saying it's about fairness, quality, diversity, and all this other BS. Where's your big mouth there? See, what happens if certain people, doesn't matter what group, hyphen, or pronoun they are, if they don't basically sell your narrative, you're going to give free lunch to the elite, whether they be in big corporations or big government, promote more divide and conquer strategies, create more deception, and manufacture the perception of your self-importance and self-preservation while throwing everybody else under the bus, eliminating the rule of law and selling yourself out to the highest bidder. Hirono. Next article. Updated Dow poised to rise as retailers Home Depot, Walmart deliver better than expected results from coronavirus. Yeah, because all the small businesses are forced to run out of business. All we're going to have left is a big fascist corporate America. That's why. Next article. Kamala Harris said, I believe and respect Biden's sexual assault accusers in 2019. So much for backstabbing and hypocrisy and double standards. Hey, I'll be vice president, maybe president. I forgot what you said. I can't remember. I misspoke. Alleged. We'll be right back after the break.
Just a quick exclamation point. Rich, you're talking about companies that are doing well, and one of the industries happens to be high tech. So there's a Michigan college that's now requiring students to download a phone application that tracks their location at all times. And it's Albion College, Albion College. It's located in Albion, Michigan. It's one of the first schools in the country to implement this tracking system. And it's, they say, because of the coronavirus. So they're asking their students to stay within a 4.5-mile perimeter of the school for an entire semester. And if a student leaves campus, the app will notify the administration, and the student could be temporarily suspended. Just want to let you all know that that's going on right now. Rich, even back to you.
Well, thank you, Vince. And why it's happening is not because of the coronavirus. The coronavirus, I've talked about the agenda many, many times and given 25, 30 talking points on the agenda. This is for the communist insurrection. This is for totalitarianism. Okay? This is for the takeover, not the coronavirus. In fact, I'd like to talk about some statistics about the coronavirus. Here we go right here. In the United States, 44% of COVID deaths came from nursing and assisted living homes that happened in only 5 states. And all 5 of those states were blue states. All right? To get the numbers up. These Democrats governors should be arrested for murder. And then they're talking about free health care for illegals, and Kamala Harris is backing that up publicly. Well, I've talked about inflation and cost shifting many times. I've used health care and public education and car insurance as some of the main examples that we're paying for because of cost shifting. It has nothing to do with racism, bigotry, sexist, misogynist, and all this stuff. The American people are broke. And massive international study shows countries with early hydroxychloroquine, HCQ, use had 79% lower mortality rate. And if this is so bad, why is there an article here that says CDC employees are busted on street violating social distance rules? Why? Why are doctors slamming Anthony Fauci in an open letter? Folks, we're being played. A lot of the people on the streets are being paid, but most of us are being played. Next article, New York City paying to house homeless people in 20% of the city's hotels, paying $2 million per night, paid for by you, the taxpayers. Remember, you, the listeners, are paying for everything via taxes and inflation, and this is Cloud and Piven style. All these cities, they want bailouts for nefarious costs, malinvestments, overtaxation, divide and conquer strategies. You're being conned. You're being used. Next article. Kamala Harris sponsored a bill that would force schools to let male athletes compete in girls' sports. Now, folks, I always try to remember to give the disclaimer. I know I've done it. I'm going to do it again. I know these articles seem surreal. I know they seem like 1984 Orwellian BS, but these are published articles in the public domain. I read almost every one of these. It's accurate. I just don't have enough time to spend just a few minutes on each article. I mean, I got to there's so much information that is so unreal. I want to get to as much of it as possible, and I usually end up tossing out a lot of articles before I come on the air. So that's why I try to eliminate small talk or reduce it as much as I can. Next article. Meet Kamala. Her top 9 fails, and one of them was pushing the anti-Kavanaugh conspiracy theory. Okay? This is the Kavanaugh effect, folks. This is where our highest court in the land, okay, is now considered a gang rapist for the rest of his life, despite no evidence. Despite millions of dollars being spent by taxpayer dollars. It's all a fraud. Next article. Kamala called for Twitter to ban Trump. So pretty soon Donald Trump is not even going to have communication to the people. Why do you think the Democrats say he tweets so much? Because the mainstream media gives him 93% bad, negative, derogatory press. He has no choice. And now they want to ban him from Twitter. We'll be right back after the break, folks.
Class, if you're inclined to pray, I'd like to ask you to pray for one of our instructors. And when I say our, I don't mean mine. I mean yours, mine, all of ours. One of our instructors is having a real tough go of it. It's one of your trusted instructors, someone who I know you respect. So I don't want to mention this particular instructor's name at this point, but this instructor really is having a tough go of it, and I don't think he wants anybody to know, or she. So, if you're inclined to pray, please do so. Soon. Thank you. Rich, back to you.
Thank you, Vince. I want to talk about some of the things that were discussed on the air or on the news just now. I got some articles on the Postal Service and voting by mail and all that stuff, and I want to discuss all that. So I'm going to get to as many articles as I can. Usually I get to about 35 to 40% sometimes of what I prepare for, so I'm just going to rattle them off here because we're running out of time. Okay, next article. Young voters love Trump's plan when it's told it's Biden's. They're doing video interviews, folks, and the young people are so dumbed down. Oh, did I insult somebody? Well, I'm really shocked because Kamala Harris said that young people like 18 to 24 are stupid. I'm just repeating what she said. But anyway, young voters love Trump's plan. See, we're not as divided as we think. When you go to school and you're paying for an education to be dumbed down and socially, politically divided, and you don't know where the talking points and the policies are coming from, and you get the narrator in the interview to say, "Oh, what do you think about this idea?" and you basically just demonize Trump when it comes from Biden's or vice versa. We have to do the reading and research. Even every word you hear me say, that Vince says, you need to verify. Don't believe anything we say. You need to read and research. That's the only thing that's going to save America. Next article. Democrats purchase Antifa .com domain. Do you remember when Hirono was in the Senate and Senator Cruz basically said, "Are you telling me with all the violence I'm paraphrasing, and all the murder and the rape and the looting and people losing their businesses and their jobs and their houses and their livelihoods, you're not going to comment negatively on Antifa?" And she walked away. Same thing with Black Lives Matter. Go, look it up. It's a money laundering tool for the Democrats. It's called Act Blue. The monies go through that and mostly goes to white Democrat candidates. You need to verify this. Next article. Wisconsin Democrats are forcing people to wear masks at home. Do you remember I told you about the four forks in the road? Twilight Zone, La La Land, 1984 Orwellian Nightmare, and Stupidville. This is where we're at when they're asking you to wear masks at home, especially when you're on Zoom. I mean, I can't comment further because it's so stupid. Next article. San Francisco Senator Scott Wiener introduces bill to decriminalize men having sex with boys. I'm hoping my pause is enough to say.
He must like boys.
Unbelievable.
He must like boys.
Next article. Report. U.S. Nuclear Research Lab hosted re-education camps for white males. When the best person for the job is not getting the job, we're insulting everybody. I've gone through this a million times. Group identity politics is made to divide and conquer. It's made to insult your work ethic, ability, and intelligence. It's made to degrade and disrespect people. It doesn't empower a nation or an individual or a group. It's designed to make us submissive. It's designed to destroy America. It's designed to reward mediocrity and eliminate opportunity. And yes, I'm blue in the face. Next article. DOJ finds Yale admissions illegally discriminated against whites and Asians. Well, then DOJ, do something about it. Stop talking about it. We're all tired of hearing talk. We want arrests. We want indictments. We want proof. Jeez. Next article. Media ignores black man's alleged execution of 5-year-old white boy. This white boy's name, I think, was like Cannon or something, and the mainstream media didn't pick this up. This is a very sad state. And, it's all part of the divide and conquer strategies because the wealthy aristocracy needs to hide their crimes, and they're using us, the people, to hate each other, to fight against each other, to create chaos and infighting against each other. This is all part of the plan. Read Orwell, read Alinsky, read Cloward and Piven, read the Frankfurt School, read Marx. It's all in text, the whole plan. Next article. He killed a man innocent, called a knockout game, and a snowflake judge gave him probation and no jail for murder. This is what's happening. We are not only delegitimizing work, we're legitimizing murder and rape. Next article. Judge demands father. Okay, you might want to sit down for this one. Judge demands the father to pay $5,000 per month to the ex-wife so the ex-wife can transition their 8-year-old son. You can't make this stuff up, folks. You just can't do it. Okay, I want to talk. We're running out of time. I'm going to skip through a bunch of stuff here. Nothing to see here. Move along. U.S. Post Office appears to be retiring vital machines ahead of mail-in ballot surge. Could this be a possible alibi and excuse to make sure that the votes don't get counted quickly so states can secede, so there's no clear winner in the presidential race to create ambiguity so Congress can vote in a temporary president? Would you be surprised? Next article. House Democrats summon Postal Service leaders to emergency hearing on mail delays. Huh. What a coincidence. Next article. New Jersey to become the 9th state to adopt universal mail-in voting. Can you connect the dots here, folks? Next article. Thousands of mail-in ballots once deemed invalid now ordered to be counted in New York City. Got to keep that narrative going. Next article. Democrats planning to contest election using state secession, which will probably put us into a civil war. Next article. Colorado mail-in ballots identify Republicans on envelope. So their next plan, if they can't steal the election through other illegitimate means, they're going to blame mail-in ballots and the Republicans on fraud. See how they do this, folks? Next article. Shipments of 20,000 fake IDs from China seized by feds ahead of election. I'm reading article after article after article of fake ballots coming into this country, of fake IDs coming into this country. Voter ID laws, that doesn't say enough. We need to correlate the database of the U.S. citizenry to the vote at the exact time. We have the technology. We can do it. We can back everything up with paper, but there's no reason the vote count can't be counted with legitimacy by the end of the day. No reason. Next article. Michigan rejects almost 11,000 mail-in ballots because 846 of them were dead. Folks, I'm not making this stuff up. I know it sounds like I could be making this stuff up, but this is all published articles in the public domain. There goes the disclaimer again. Oh, and the FEC commissioner says there's a substantial chance we don't know who the winner is going to be on election night. They're setting you up. They're setting up the American people for fraud. Next article. Cuomo says Trump has some liability for increased in crime in New York City. I could barely say that sentence because I'm almost choking. Can you imagine that? Cuomo has killed tens of thousands of old people. Where are the relatives of these people in these 5 states that have killed all these old people? Next article. I wish I had more time, folks. I don't. Sorry. Planned Parenthood gets more than $600 million a year from the federal government. No, it's not from the federal government. We pay for everything through inflation and taxes. We pay for it. That's right. Planned Parenthood, who admitted under oath in a courtroom that they harvest body parts and organs from live babies. Next article. Lockdowns escalate obesity epidemic. Not just obesity, suicides, drug use, antidepressant, antipsychotic drugs, opportunity, eliminating small business, which eliminates jobs. There's a whole line of what lockdowns are doing. This is all planned. This has been planned for a long time. Connect the dots. We have given chronological order for all this. Next article. Democrats refuse to help the people and demand state pension funds must be bailed out. Why, when you do nefarious malinvestment and you're buying people's vote where they get 10 times the amount of pay, benefits, and pension plans so they can vote Democrat, which 90% of government workers do, why should we bail you out when you're buying people off and having people pay for it who are on Social Security who get 1/10 to 1/50th of the monthly income and benefits? Why? Well, let me tell you where things are going, folks. New Zealand says it will put all COVID infectees and their families in quarantine facilities. Does that sound familiar? Concentration camps? Murder camps? This is the beta test right there. Next article. Top Pelosi staffer registered as foreign agent to lobby for Chinese state media outlet. Imagine my shock. Remember Feinstein, also in California, had a spy, a Chinese spy working for her for 20 years. But she didn't know anything. Duh. Maybe we should call Senator Hirono. Next article. Fake ID seizures, mostly from China, on the rise. Sounds familiar? Yeah, I just said something like that a few moments ago. Next county. LA County vows to free criminal illegal aliens into the U.S. This is the LA County. This is the mayor who says, if you don't do what I say, I'm going to shut off your water and power. every governor, politician, lawyer, and judge who does these type of behaviors, if a crime is committed of any level, they need to be legally responsible. The people need to go to their houses and take the money due to them. Next article. Kamala refused to prosecute priests. Sex abuse. Doesn't fit the narrative, folks. Part of pedophilia. Former CIA officer charged with spying for China. You see where this is going, folks? We'll be right back after this
Hold
break.
that thought. Rich talked about the United States Postal Service in shambles. Well, I can tell you how to fix the class. It's really simple. Next time you get your credit card bill and you have a late fee on it because they say your payment arrived late, you call up your credit card company, say, I sent it in on time. I'm not paying the late fee. Please remove it. Now, if enough of us do that, the credit card companies will call their easily bribed Congress people. And they'll say, look, we're losing a lot of money here. Our customers are tying up the phone lines. You got to fix the Postal Service because people are complaining that the payments aren't arriving. So fix the Postal Service. That's how you do it. As simple as that. Rich Scheben?
Yeah, thank you. We're running out of time. I'm just going to mention 4 articles here because we're down to a couple minutes. And I want to mention these articles for my fellow Montanans. First of all, this article just came out. Teen girl says that Montana Governor Steve Bullock grabbed her butt. She didn't say butt, but you get my drift. At a gala, a Montana gala. Anyway, I think what we need to do, folks, is when Republicans basically get called, sexist, misogynist, homophobes, bigots, racists, but yet the Democrats don't have any accountability for what they do. There was so many years of derogatory comments about President Trump when he was caught on tape, didn't even know he was on tape, mentioning about grabbing something, when we have a real live woman who came forward and said that Joe Biden actually fingered her, but yet you hear one millionth of it. And with all the people who came forward against Joe Biden, even Kamala Harris was one of them, and now she's taking it back. Okay? Hypocrisy, double standards, cowardness, and if you're able to buy somebody off for the narrative, who cares, right? As long as they're a liberal Democrat. Trust me, the Democrats have been hijacked, folks. This is not JFK's Democrat Party anymore. I promise you. This is a globalist takeover, a communist insurrection funded by the wealthiest people in the world. And then here's an article right here that talks about what Bullock is going through right now and how he pushed taxes very high for Montanans while using state patrol as personal security on his failed presidential run, while his brother's company received millions in state taxpayer-funded contracts, $14 million in state contracts. See, hard work, effort, proven results, and qualifications don't matter, folks. It all depends on what group you're from. And I paid extremely high taxes for years from the Montana Department of Revenue under Steve Bullock. They said I had 2 finished bathrooms, that I was on grid, that I had a finished basement, and a list of other amenities, and it's all false. I don't even have a legal finished bathroom. I live in a dry cabin. I don't even have traditional running water. But it doesn't matter because I don't sell. I'm not willing to be bought and paid for to sell the narrative. Next article, University of Pittsburgh cardiologist is stripped from fellowship program after criticizing affirmative action. I want you to think about that. Do you want a cardiologist who gets a job based on what group they're in? What gender they identify as? What sexual orientation they have? What skin pigmentation shade? What religion they are? Folks, we are losing America. We got to give the jobs to the best people, the people who have paid their dues, the people who have common sense and logic and know how to use math. comment on this, but we've just gotten so stupid that I don't even know what to say. We've gotten so stupid. Next article. University of Connecticut is going to pay an author, a social justice activist, her name is Robin DiAngelo, $20,000 for a 3.5-hour lecture to basically tell us about our white privilege. Can you believe this? Well, when I tried to get a job with the New York City Fire Department, and the women's groups couldn't pass the physical test, so they sued to lower the bars of standards and expectations. Are you going to talk about that, Robin? Or how about you, Hirono? When I got a degree in forestry, I tried to get a job in the National Forest Service so I can come to Montana from New York. And they told me at the interview that they couldn't hire me as a white male. They hired 2 girls sitting in the waiting room with no education and no experience. How about Robin? Hirono, are you going to talk about that? When I tried to get a job, a part-time job share with GlaxoSmithKline, they told me it was for women only. Are you going to talk about that? I hear a lot of big mouths and a lot of talks, a lot of double standards, and a lot of hypocrisies, but I don't hear any truth. Thank you for being here, folks. We appreciate it.
Yeah, and a lot of companies are buying back their stock. Just now, they've announced it to enrich the CEOs and the top management who are all shareholders. Can you imagine that? It doesn't do any good for the little people. It doesn't do any good for the product development. It has to do with enriching the wealthiest of the wealthy. That's what's happening all across America right now. The big corporations are doing it. Rich has been talking about it for years.